fresh off.
What's going on, man?
Man, I'm all worked up supporting Russell Wilson.
I guess.
By the way, when he was at Wisconsin, you're like an encyclopedia for college football. Mm-hmm. Do you remember Russell? I remember him at NC State. Do you remember how he changed Wisconsin football for a year? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Go back
100%. To that point, now we've seen it broken, it seems like every single year. But remember, Colin, to that point, that was the most efficient college football season we've ever seen from a quarterback. He set the QBR standard or rating standard for the history of college football in one season. He went in there and was a captain right away. He is the reason, the catalyst, why this graduate transfer rule has become so in vogue throughout college football because of what happened at Wisconsin. And they almost went and won the Rose Bowl. Remember, it was the great TCU team with Andy Dalton. I think Tank Carter was a linebacker that actually beat them in the Rose Bowl, or else they would have been Rose Bowl champions. That was a really good football team. And the reason was Russell Wilson. It was a fascinating year.
So I was told a couple of days ago that expect the Pac-12 at least to play a condensed Pac-12 schedule. No traveling, no out of conference, no out of region. It is going to be condensed if they can get it in the fall. And with California's legislators, governor, mayor of L.A., we're not sure that's true. Your thought on games being played just regionalized, Big Ten versus Big Ten, SEC versus SEC. How's that land for you?
Okay, so the first thing is nothing has been decided firmly, and they're talking about all sorts of situations and plans for the season. I think I would start with this, Colin, and I want to make this abundantly clear. I absolutely believe there will be college football this fall in some capacity. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to happen. Now, what it looks like, that's what then we get into this minutia. What does it look like? Are we just going to do conference schedules? I've heard every commissioner and a lot of ADs talk about trying to get to those conference schedules right away when the weather is warm and when they feel like they have a window of opportunity early in the season to potentially play just conference teams. Like you said, it would reduce the amount of travel. The hard part with that is that there is some large revenue games that are scheduled right now in the non-league. So, and in particular, Notre Dame is out there looking at their ACC schedule with their scheduling partnership and what they could possibly do outside of this. Now, I want to go back to where you initially started, which is the Pac-12. And you talked about they were talking about condensed schedules and so on and so forth. I want to be very clear about this. Larry Scott does not have the political capital to get that conference to behave as one. Okay, so what's going to happen in the Pac-12 if there's a conference that is most likely to be fractured, one school playing in one state against some other team, regardless of what's going on elsewhere in the conference, it will be the Pac-12. In fact, I've been told by multiple sources that the ADs have had conversations behind the conference's back that would tell each other, listen, if we're unable to play via a mayor's ruling, a state governor's ruling, you guys go ahead and look out for yourself. And in fact, some of the ADs in states that really believe that they will have football have offered specifically the California schools, and some have offered even the Oregon schools, the chance to come play home games in their state. So if we make any sort of assertion about what we think that this is going to look like, I think we would be jumping way ahead of where they're at in the process right now, because everything's on the table in the Pac-12. And make no bones about it, the ADs are the one driving that bus because Larry Scott does not have the political capital to get them to all behave as one.
So I was saying this earlier. I don't believe in these garage bands that just never got a break. It doesn't matter. The Beatles weren't even from here. U2's not from here. If you're talented today, America finds you and compensates you. Ricky Gervais is not from here. We found him and we love him. I don't buy that Jarrett Stidham is this secret sauce. He got drafted in the 4th round. Nobody was outraged. He played at a massive power with NFL guys everywhere. He beat Alabama. And now all these football insiders are like, ooh, he's special. Oh, Belichick was willing to move off Brady after he won a Super Bowl with Garoppolo. Belichick, though, with an older Brady off a bad season, wanted Tom to re-sign with Jarrett Stidham there. Is it possible? You saw him play, Joel. Stidham's he's okay. He's average.
And remember, he was a transfer. You know, he started his career at Baylor. Not many people remember that and remember how hard you've been on our boy, the first pick, Joe Burrow, for having to transfer away from Ohio State.
Yes.
But I will tell you this, that there is no secret sauce. And I think we attribute, as sports fans, in particular in the football arena, I think that we attribute way too much secret sauce to New England, right? I think a large reason why Tom Brady struggled is because Bill Belichick, the GM, failed him. Who did he have to throw to? Put his eggs in the basket of what? Antonio Brown? Like, what are we talking about? So to a large extent, I think that people view New England and the quarterback position at New England through this lens that they're going to win 11 games and almost make the playoffs regardless of what happened with Tom Brady because of what happened with him when he tore his ACL. Remember when Matt Castle won 11 games, they missed the playoffs, and it was like, oh my gosh, Bill Belichick's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and he might be the greatest coach of all time. But I will tell you, there's no secret sauce, and Bill Belichick would not have offered Tom Brady a contract, even if Tom Brady felt like that was a bit of a slight, if he felt like Jarrett Stidham was a better option. In no semblance of reality is Jarrett Stidham a better option at quarterback for the New England Patriots than Tom Brady, period.
You have a baseball career and a football background. So I was saying earlier, there are athletes in my life that do things that are not explained. Russell Wilson never gets hit. You cannot explain it. Lamar does. Carson Wentz does. Mahomes does. Russell never gets hit. Mariano Rivera, one pitch. Nobody could hit it for 20 years. That's never happened in the history of baseball. When people have a special ability and it's not quantifiable, they become great. Dennis Rodman, best rebounder ever. Why? Skinny 6'7", playing against 7-footers. It makes no sense.
That's right.
I can't explain it.
Right.
Tua, I believe, is the only quarterback in this class that does stuff that you can't explain. He's innate. That there are instincts here. He's not the biggest. His arm is okay. He's not a great athlete. And he's the number one high school quarterback. He comes in as a freshman. He's great. When I see special, all bets are off. Most of the great athletes, they're special. So I think I can explain Burrow and Justin Herbert and Jordan Love. I can't explain Tua. Does that make any sense? Am I just whiffing here?
I think you're whiffing, but I love Tua as a player. You know that. You and I have talked about Tua extensively. I think he is a brilliant player. There's no doubt. His biggest flaw, as I've told you before, is that he thinks he's more elusive than he is. He actually thinks he's Russell Wilson when he's not. And he does get hit, and he does get wrapped up from behind, which causes the ankle injuries, which he's had 2 surgeries on. It caused the hip fracture. So that's concerning to me. Now, his play from the pocket is uncanny. It's fantastic. I love his quick delivery. He's smart. He knows where to go with the football. I would say that he, and to a large extent Joe Burrow as well, I mean, they got to throw to some unbelievable players. Maybe the best wide receiver on Alabama's team wasn't even available in the draft, and they still had a couple of guys go in the first round from a wide receiver standpoint. So he certainly was a benefactor of having great players around him. I will tell you this, though, that I don't believe that there's a quarterback, even Joe Burrow, who I'm so high on. You're explaining something that's like unexplainable. And I would call them independent contributors. It doesn't matter what's going on around them. They will come in and they will perform. I thought Andrew Luck was that level. I thought John Elway was that level. I thought Peyton Manning to a large extent was that level. In fact, you referenced my baseball career just quickly. I was in the Padres organization in the year 2000 and 2001. Tony Gwynn was still there, and one day in spring training, I had the opportunity to sit at a table and have lunch with him and listen to Tony Gwynn talk about hitting. And I was looking across from him, and I was like, nothing about this guy's physical stature would suggest that he's one of the greatest hitters in the history of the sport. And yet, listening to him talk about the philosophy of hitting and pitch selection, the way that he approached each at bat, it was just a light bulb for me. Like, of course. His brain, his mind is why he's so great. Later that spring, actually, the Padres did a minor league deal with Ricky Henderson. If you go back, you'll check this out. He was in AAA for a big portion of that spring training, and Sean Burroughs was a third baseman at the time for the AAA team. He got hurt. His arm was sore. He was going to be down for a week, so they just said, hey, kid, from rookie ball, go play third base and bat in Sean Burroughs' place in the lineup. So I hit second behind Ricky Henderson for a week in spring training in the year 2001. It was one of the most fascinating experiences of my life. In fact, he would constantly look back at me before he went up to bat as I was walking to the on-deck circle and Colin, he would be like, 2, 3. And I was like, what is Ricky Henderson telling me numbers about? And then I finally asked our skipper, Jeff Gardner, I was like, Gardy, why does Ricky keep telling me a number before he goes his? And he goes, oh, hey, Rook, that's the number of pitches he expects you to take so he can steal second. I was like, oh, I've been out there swinging from my heels, not knowing what was going on. But it goes to your point. You talk about these innate contributors, the greatness that can almost not be measured. We're seeing it in The Last Dance. I saw it firsthand with Ricky Henderson and Tony Gwynn, watching Ricky steal bases well into his 40s, only because he knew how to. His first step was as powerful and as quick as I've ever seen. Tua is not that, right? I just don't think that he's an independent contributor yet. We haven't seen him go through a college football season unscathed from a health standpoint. So I think that there's some room for him to go and prove it out there in the NFL. He's got some great qualities, but I don't think that I'm going to sit here and say, like, hands down, he's got things that I can't explain, because I think that you can certainly get better if you're Tua.
Good talking to you, Klatt. I like hearing those old baseball stories. Why don't you put a pipe in, once in a while, and you just sit back on the porch, sip bourbon, and talk baseball stories with Joel Klatt. That's an idea for a hell of a podcast, to be honest with you.
How about that? Ricky Henderson stealing second base while I'm swinging from my heels. He probably was like, who is this guy? Like, get him out of here. A year later, I was at the University of Colorado.
Joel Klatt, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.